Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks, and today we're bringing part 2 of our Camino de Costa Rica, the new long-distance trail that takes you from the Caribbean or the Atlantic coast all the way to the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. It's an incredible 16-day hike that in part 1 we learned about the trail itself. Today we're going to dig down more into the logistics to find out exactly what's involved in doing this incredible adventure. So let's get started. So we're back with Conchita, who hiked this entire trail. It's 280 kilometers, about 175 miles, to commemorate her 70th, yes, you heard me right, her 70th birthday. She did this incredible adventure, which she assures me that anybody who's reasonably fit, and particularly if they train, can do. But also, I would like to also mention, too, Conchita was instrumental in helping to establish this whole trail, so I'm especially pleased to have her back on. As you recall from the first episode, this Costa Rica Camino takes you from coast to coast, but more importantly, it takes you through the villages of Costa Rica, places that most tourists don't get to see. And not only is it a cool hike through 5 different ecosystems, we're actually helping, by doing this trail, helping the villagers live and stay in their hometowns instead of moving to the city to find work. Because of the trail, infrastructure is starting to occur. People are building little restaurants. The locals are feeding us. They are building shelters and lodging for us so that we have a place to stay when we stop for the night. They're building little excursions, maybe a cooking class, or taking us on a bird watching expedition, etc. So it's done all sorts of incredible things as a total win-win proposition for us, the adventure traveler, and the Costa Rican community. What a cool way to interact with locals when you travel, which is sometimes can be one of the harder things to do, to actually connect with the local people. This does it in spades. So now with that, let's pick up where we left off last time. Welcome back, Conchita. Thanks for coming back and telling us more about the El Camino de Costa Rica.
Thanks, Kit. Delighted to be here with you.
In part 1, you told us about the trail itself and your experience, the types of things that you would see if you did this El Camino. But we have a lot of questions still, which is why we're broken into 2 parts, about some of the logistics and planning and some of the things that we need to expect to make sure that this is a proper adventure for us to go on. So you had said in part 1 that it's necessary to bring a guide. Is this something you arrange, or how does that work?
So as you see in our website, www.elcaminodecostarica.org, there is a button that you can push. And basically what that does is that takes you to an email that you can send us with an inquiry. And so we are like the clearinghouse for hikers that are interested to begin the logistics part. We don't operate. This is operated by local guide groups that we have trained, and we do some capacity building with them. We help them market and things like that. But it's really, they operate. It's their business. And some of them are new, and others have been around for quite a while and are just including El Camino into their services. There's also several large companies that do sort of fancier tours offers, and they sell El Camino in London and in New York, or they started to last year. And this is Costa Rican Trails, and they're a very respected tour operator in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica Sun Tours. Costa Rica Sun Tours is actually advertising in Australia at this point. Now that, they'll take care of you from beginning to end. The more local groups, which are the ones we're trying to develop, will also pick you up at the airport and bring you back to the San Jose area, so you don't have to worry about the details of the logistics. And what happens is when you send us one of those emails of inquiries, we'll send you that basic information. We'll send you how to look at the trail in Wikilog, because we have a trace of the trail there that you can study the altimetry. and we'll give you how to contact the different operators. And depending on what you want or what you tell us in those first emails, there's an interaction between us and the interested hiker. At the beginning, we try to determine which of the operators is best for you. There are some that are more meticulous about the details, and others that are really into nature, others that are really great photographers, others that have really strong connection with more local people. So depending on what the person is looking for, we try to direct them to one of the operators, and they will then give you all the information.
So two things there. So number one, it's really important to communicate what we're hoping to get out of our adventure. And then number two, my question is, the guide that you hire outside of when we had the Indigenous Extra Guide, is that same guide with you, or does each leg you have a different guide? How does that work?
So there's usually one guide that will go through the whole length with you, and that guide will engage some of the local people where necessary. The two main places, the Indigenous guide, they will engage the Indigenous guide. And then in the forest reserve on the other side, they will engage the local person that knows that forest really well. And so they'll take care of that. They're pretty much a full service.
So that one guide will take us, he or she will make all the logistical arrangements for whatever local other guides that we might need. So we just have one connection that we have to work with and deal with.
Exactly.
Now, how is their English for those of us that don't speak Spanish?
Well, they know that they need to have at least somebody in the team that's taking the group that speaks English. They speak English poorly, but they speak enough to be able to communicate pretty well. Perfect. So that's usually not a serious problem. One of the things is that they will carry the luggage from place to place, and they will provide the tents.
So you're just carrying a day pack. You don't have to worry about your tent or sleeping bag and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now, the trick is putting together a group, because a lot of the people who want to do this are either single or a couple of friends. And basically, if you go with just a couple of friends, the cost is very high because you have to pay for the guide and the guide's lodging and the transport. So usually a group of 6 or 8 is ideal, because then you're spreading the fixed cost among 6 or 8 people, and it makes it more accessible. But because people are asking to do this and say, I want to go in March. So then an operator starts putting together a group for March. So there is that going back and forth of coordinating to form the groups for a particular expedition, which is a little challenging at this point. When there is more volume, then they can just set an expedition and know that it's going to get filled. Now they're sort of, well, can you do it March? That sort of thing. But I think that that's going to be the case for maybe the next couple of years. And then after that, they'll just be set expedition. And then the hiker can say, I want to join this expedition.
Probably by 2025, what we just discussed, you talk to the operator and they'll say, we have openings in this week, and this week. Which one works best for you?
Exactly. That's where we're aiming. Now, we also try to put people of similar characteristic. For example, when we were putting together a January, I was helping one of the operators put together a group. There was a group of young Austrian and German and Belgian hikers. And then this one woman wanted to join from Canada part of the way. And she sounded to me like she was like them. And so I put her in the group, and it turned out that she was a much older woman than these young whippersnappers. And she got along. She was like the favorite of the group after the second day. So there you go, assumptions,
Right. And then probably too, also the tour operators from Australia, and I think you said one in Europe, they probably are already doing that in some format too. So I'll put links to all this in the show notes. And as it develops too, if you'll just keep me posted, I'll keep updating the website with any information about this, because I have a feeling you hit on a winner. This is going to be a spectacular and very popular trail within the next decade, I'm sure.
Now, my big advice is that
people should invest. I mean, maybe this is something that you all that are expert hikers know, but maybe for me, the most important thing for both doing Compostela, when I did that 10 years ago and now, is really high quality socks. Of course, boots, but everybody would know that, well-fitting boots. But the socks, really good socks, because what really makes it unpleasant for people, as you know, is getting those blisters. So I had, my guide is this wonderful woman who's actually a dentist, has her own clinic, but she fell in love with the Camino. So she has people working for the clinic, and she comes and she is my guide. She's a guide for small groups. She only does 2 people at a time. And she has she had this cream that is a sulfadamide of silver that you put on your feet at night, and then you put socks on. And then in the morning is basically a Desitin-based cream that you put on your socks. And I managed not to get any blisters. And I think that's what makes for a happy
feet, happy life. And I'm a big fan of the toe socks where they individually your sock.
Well, that's what she uses.
I use that as my liner sock, and then I put a wool sock over that. So even if my feet get wet, they're still warm. You don't get cold in the wool, even if it's wet and freezing. Yeah, I would get blisters between my toes, and that solved that whole problem. So, and I'll also put a link to the Wilderness First Aid episode on the Adventure Travel Show that we recently did as well, because we talk a little bit about that. And let's talk a little bit about clothing, because you're going through all these different ecosystems. So you need to be prepared for the heat. You need to be prepared for the cold. So you need to be prepared for everything is what it sounds like to me.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. You really do. Let me just say before we talk about clothes, poles. Anybody who thinks that they can do this without poles will find out very quickly that they can't. You might be able to do about 50% of it without poles, but in the other 50%, you really need poles. There are some pretty steep inclines and ascents, and then there's some places where there's too much mud. For even our very experienced guide in the forest reserve fell, and he was going with a machete, clearing away the path. And he was obviously expert, because the minute he was about to fall, the first thing he did, he threw his machete out of the way so that he wouldn't get hurt. But you need poles.
So. I saw on the website, you said the maximum slope was 17.6% up to 25%. That's super steep. And that the average slope was around 4 to almost 5%, which is a nice one, but you're going to have some super, super steep. And if it's muddy and you've got roots, and going downhill in particular, you're going to need those poles.
Yeah. So what's really good is those hiking pants where you can take the bottom off with it, that have the zippered bottom, because the temperatures do change. I usually started with the long pants in the morning, and then I took those off in the middle of the day to enjoy the sun. But you do need long sleeves. There are parts where you don't. Obviously, you'll see in the photos that I don't have long sleeves in several of them. But for the forest, I think the best thing is to have one of those Columbia long sleeve shirts. That you can
that roll up to the short sleeve. That's what I wear, that, and I wear the zip off pants. But I usually, because of heat and sun, I like the long everything. It keeps the sun off.
I agree. And then a hat. You're just safer with a hat in terms of everything. I also think because you have to put sunblock, and so then you need to make sure that sunblock doesn't get in your eyes and stuff like that. So all that, but I'm sure expert hikers know all that.
Right, but those that are new to this or don't know what they don't know, we want to make sure. And I can also do the link for what to put in your backpack, and I'm sure part of that is going to be insect spray.
Spray, absolutely. You want insect spray handy. You have to put it on several times. So you want to keep that handy. It's not something you put in the morning and forget about it. You have to put it several times, because as you sweat, it goes away. And it varies. We didn't get a lot of mosquitoes at this time, but I know that in June and July, there's a lot more. So you need to have the bug spray.
Is there a particular time of year that it's best to do this trail? or talk about that, because you're going to have a rainy season and a drier season, even though you have to expect rain at any time. Talk about the weather and the cycle throughout the year, if you would.
Okay, well, see, this is a funny thing. Costa Rica has two weather systems, the Atlantic weather system and the Pacific weather system. And during September and October and part of November, the Atlantic is beautiful, no rain, and the Pacific is raining like hell. So, and then when you get into December, January, February, and March, the Pacific is beautiful, no rain, blue skies, but it starts to rain in the Atlantic. So here's the thing. I did it, we only got rain once. In the rainforest, when we started to come down from the mountains through the rainforest, we got 1 day of rain, because that's, even though it's almost in the middle of the country, it's still the Atlantic weather system. And then actually we were very lucky that through the indigenous territory, even though it's supposedly raining, it's not yet, in December, is not yet really, really rainy. You got like 3 or 4 days without rain, and then, 3 or 4 days with rain, and that sort of thing. So the only month that I would not recommend doing it is November. That's really the only months. And then the other months, there are pros and cons, because it's nice if you get up in the morning and you start walking and everything's really, really green, no rain, and then it starts to rain at 3 o'clock. That sort of clears up the air and everything is very green. So that is what you get between April and end of August through most of the country.
Well, that's actually kind of nice, because you're probably already at your lodging then, because I think you're only hiking about half the day, correct?
Exactly. And the fact that it rains, at night, but by November, it's raining all day. So you don't want that, because it's impossible to walk. The mud is the main thing. So people have had wonderful hikes in December, January, February, March. By March, everything's pretty dry. And so you see less animals and stuff like that. But then the hiking is really easy, because there's hardly any mud. So there's all these trade-offs each month. And then, May, June, and July. I mean, July has been great, because you get that mixture. It's still not that wet, but it's already getting green, a lot more green again. The animals are coming up. So that's what I can tell you.
I remember when I was looking at wanting to go to see Tortuguero to see the turtles hatch. I was going to go in August or September. And I'm guessing, based on what you said about leathernecks nesting, that's probably a good time to see them as well. Tell me about August.
Yes, so August is very nice in the Atlantic area. And in the Pacific, it's basically raining in the afternoon. So it's really a nice combination. And you're seeing the hatchings of, you have the green turtles coming in to nest, and the leather nests are basically hatching. So it's nice to see that. And there's migratory birds starting. September is wonderful for the migratory birds. And so anybody who has even a slight interest in birding, August and September can be very, very nice. There's about 2 weeks in July where it's perfect weather in all of Costa Rica. They call it the summer of St. John. And it's like, when I first heard it, it's just, what's this? But it's true, it actually happens. It's either the first or second week in July, or the second and third, or the third and fourth, but sometime in July, there's 2 weeks of perfect weather in all of Costa Rica. Now, don't hold me to it, so far, because the weather is changing. Sometimes we see the dry season starting a little late, sometimes it starts very early. So it's not a perfect prediction. There are changes.
So we talked just briefly, we touched on the food, and I saw that you're actually working with a lot of the local people to build a gastronomic tourist part. You're trying to incorporate that in. Talk a little bit about the food and the different influences between the Spaniards and the indigenous and the Afro influence, and if you could, and what kind of food are we going to be eating?
Yes, yes. So definitely you've put your fingers on the different influences, and there's definitely a different field for the food in the Caribbean area and the Atlantic area. They have versions of rice and beans with coconut. They have crab soup that they make with coconut that's really delicious. So all those variations, they have lots of sweets that are made with coconuts and bananas and things of that sort. And then the indigenous people have their own versions of all of this, but they're not so ready to offer them yet. We do have a chef that goes and there's about 3 or 4 excellent chefs in San Jose, and they actually go and spend some times with the indigenous people, and they together develop new versions of the traditional indigenous foods. And one can hire them to come to one of the lodges and do some of that. They do basically a lot of smoked meats, a smoked chicken. They have confections, chocolate confections that they do. Lots of bananas, sweet plantains with chocolate. And so all of that's going on. What one has to ask for it really, because they're still not in the mentality. They don't value what they have enough to think of offering it automatically. So we always have to ask for it. Oh, I want to taste this. And then in the mountain areas, they have all these really delicious trout that they cook in a variety of versions. The staple is always rice and beans. And they have fried yucca, boiled yucca with garlic and oil, all of that. You can get that. That's like common all the way across. They have cane ice cream. There's a lot of little things. They have these pejibaye soup, pejibaye, and the picadillos. The picadillos are made with all the different roots. There's this, I should have looked up what the name of it is in English. It's called Aracache. And the Picadillo of Aracache is so delicious. Aracache is a root vegetable, but they serve that a lot. So they'll give you pork chop in a sauce, and then they give you rice and beans, and then they give you aracache, picadillo, and a little salad. They call that a casado, a married one. I don't know why they call it that.
And we're going to be well fed.
Exactly. And the handmade tortillas are delicious in the morning for breakfast. So we had a group of vegan hikers, and they had no problem. There was plenty for them to eat all across the Camino. Certainly vegetarians are always accommodated.
Does anybody have any gluten for those that have
gluten? Because, a lot of it is corn-based, not wheat-based. So gluten-free is an easy thing. Rice is gluten-free. The tortillas are gluten-free, the beans. And so gluten-free is like not a problem. Not a problem at all.
Good. And did you have a cooking class option, I believe, in one of the segments?
Yes. So the cooking class option is in the sugar cane area. Casa Turire has a Costa Rican cooking class. And we also have 2 chefs that will come to any lodge. They are based in San Jose, but they will come to any lodge and do a cooking class and serve the meal around the cooking class. So
that's something we coordinate through the association?
You just need to ask the tour operators. They know about this. So
okay. All right. So your guide will take care of everything for you once you find your guide.
Yeah. You just need to ask. So if you listen to this podcast, you'll know what to ask for.
Right. And imagine the offerings will continue to grow too, as people get more creative and start thinking about things. Well, what else can we offer?
Exactly.
All right, let's talk a little bit about safety too. I got a couple of different areas that I want to talk about. You said it's a very quiet trail, so even in the villages and all that, people feel safe.
Yes, there's no problem once you're in your lodge or in the village. There's only one section that we haven't been able to get a handle on. We have the community organizations trying to help. They've engaged the local police. That's the first section of the Atlantic area, the flat from Muelle Goshen to Cimarrones is called. Is stage one, not the islands. We have stage 1A, which is the island trails, which are perfectly safe. And this is stage 1B, because a lot of people only do 1B. They don't do 1A.
Mm-hmm.
And so that section, you want a car nearby. That seems to be the only deterrent. We had two guys, one from Sri Lanka and one from Seattle, that insisted that they wanted to do it alone, that they were expert hikers, that they had hiked the Sahara, that they did not want a guide. And I kept saying, you have to have a guide. You have to have a guide. No, we don't want a guide. So I finally made the guide go with them, paid for the guide because, I wasn't going to ask them to pay for something they didn't want. And then they told the guide to go away. And what happened? They were walking in that section, and an adolescent in a motorbike came by and went between them, and one of them had to jump to the curb. And fortunately, nobody got hurt, but that's the sort of thing. You have some adolescence unrest. These are young people that are unhappy. COVID has been very difficult for employment in that area. But even before that, I can't blame it all on COVID. It's just that there's a little social unrest. I mean, they even go in and they disturb the church services. And so it's not related to the Camino at all. It's just an area that there is some social unrest. And we've looked at other alternatives, but we have to go through there. There's no alternative. The one deterrent is to have a car follow, the guide's car follow the hikers, maybe 400, 500 meters behind. And once that happens, there's no problem.
I got a question about that too. Is this a particularly scenic section, or could somebody just hire the car to take them to skip this section?
Yeah, you could. This is the banana fields. It's a flat gravel road. So definitely you can just hop in the car and skip that section if you want.
All right. So it's not
you could do the island trails. The island trails is just costly because you need two boats to take you. And the gasoline is very expensive. So that raises the cost. And that's why people only go to the Reserva and see the Caribbean and then start actually walking this 1B section, but you could do it the other way around if you're willing to adjust the cost there and then just skip that part. Yeah.
And just check with the guide and get your different cost options to see what the current prices are and decide according to your budget and what the prices are. Let's talk you need to be bringing about 3 liters of water a day. How are we treating our water from streams, or how is that working?
No, you can buy gallons of waters and have the tour operators buy those big gallons, and they keep on refilling it with filtered water from their own places because they have places nearby. So no, I mean, the only thing is to take, if you're an expert hiker, you probably already have your pills or the filters, just in case you were to run out of water within the indigenous people's land. But most of the time, water is not a problem. There is enough sources of filtered water in nearby, and your guides will provide that.
Okay. All right, nice. And we did say earlier that somebody is hauling our basic pack. Is that with a burro, or how does all that work?
No, at the beginning and end of each section, there's 4x4 access. So basically, the person is taking your luggage from where you slept to where you're going to sleep the next day, and probably meeting you a few kilometers before, just in case precisely you've run out of water or you need a pick-me-up or something like that. There's car access through most of the end points and maybe 3 or 4 kilometers before the end point.
So we're basically bringing our jackets, any snacks and food, our water, emergency kit, as if we were just heading on a day hike.
Yeah, exactly. A day hike. But usually the guide is carrying all the emergency.
I always like to have my own, just in case.
Yes.
I always like to carry my life. I don't go in the woods without being able to take care of myself. All right, we talked about the weather. And you said it's right now, it's not very populous. Are you seeing mostly foreigners, or how many Ticos are Ticos big hikers? I don't know. Although I hiked Chiripo, and
Yeah,
almost everybody I saw there were the locals.
yes. So Ticos like their peaks. So they like two things. They like their peaks and they like their waterfalls. And every Sunday and Saturday and Sunday, you have buses leaving the San Jose Central section by the National Theater, and they go to all these places. We haven't had as much as we would like of Ticos hiking the Camino, because it's like if your destination is not a peak or a waterfall, they're not yet accustomed to it. Though, like I said, we have about 50 of them every month doing it. And we have a passport, which for them is what you really, they do the Camino in sections on Saturdays and Sundays, and they fill in this passport like Compostela. And then at the end, they, it's a celebration that they've done the whole of the Camino de Costa Rica, and then they get a teacher saying 280 kilometers completed.
Nice.
And so that works for them. So more and more, but actually we have a team working on how we can engage the local hikers a bit more, because the people who have gotten most excited about it have been Europeans, Canadians, and Americans.
Is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not ask you that we should know, or even yourself? Was there something, I wish I'd thought to bring this or do this, or talk a little bit about that, please?
Well, I think that the other thing is the frustration of sometimes not having cell coverage or internet. Even in some of the really nice lodges in your cabin, you don't have cell coverage or internet, only in the restaurant or the eating area. So that's something to get adjusted to. I would say that just prepare your family and friends, saying that you're not going to be easily accessible, because there's many places where you're very comfortable, you're very happy to be there, but you don't have cell coverage. That the best thing is to, when you get to the airport in San Jose, to buy one of those chips for Colby and put it on your phone, so that
Is that a SIM card you're talking about?
a SIM card, yes. Sorry.
SIM card. Okay, so to buy a local SIM card. And I kind of like being off the grid myself. And like I said, the guides do have means of communicating in case somebody does need some assistance or some safety assistance. We stop in, it looked like 21 different villages we go through. Are there any that it would be smart to take an extra day just to stay in the village and explore? Or do you have enough time when you're there to do the exploration?
Well, that's a really good question. There's so many trade-offs in terms of people having time available. But if you were to ask me, where would I stay an extra day? I would stay at Reserva Pacuare on the Caribbean an extra day. I might stay near the Barbilla National Park an extra day, maybe. I would stay in the Orosi area an extra day. And definitely at the end near Manuel Antonio.
Definitely.
But you know that, yeah.
Yes. So, and then Manuel, that's the only place I ever saw a sloth.
Oh, you will see lots of sloth in the
Really?
Camino. Especially Reserva Pacuare is all over the place.
The animals are all around you. I remember the first couple of times I went to Costa Rica, I was like, I didn't see any of the animals. They're there. Our eyes aren't trained, but the guide's eyes are. And so they can see them to show them to you.
Exactly. And that's the other important things. We have one guide, his name is Juancho, and he's with Uri Trek. And this guy, he sees the most beautiful insects you have ever seen. These are the most colorful, unique. If you go in and see some of his photos on Facebook, he posts a lot on the Camino because he's constantly on it. He also has mountain deviations that if you're a really strong advanced hiker and ready to really go into the mountain, then that would be the guide I would tell you to go with, because It's perfectly legitimate. We don't make it the official part of the trail because we don't want it, the risk and responsibility of somebody who's really not able to take on those challenges. But there's about 4 mountain deviations off of the Camino that are really spectacular, that you would go with him and his camera, and it's really quite something. And he sees mushrooms, insects, birds, everything. He's just amazing what he sees.
I want to know I want you to delve a little deeper in how hard is hard, like, because that's what I want to do. I just want to make sure this 60-year-old body can do it if I train. So how challenging is hard? How expert do I have to be?
I mean, for me, for me, the hard thing is the fear of slipping, And
but
so
if you fall, are you falling off a cliff or are you just falling?
No, you're falling on maybe a muddy rock.
Okay.
But see, for me, that I couldn't take it out. So I end up getting very tense because I don't want to fall, and that just makes going down very difficult. And so you're crossing streams with waterfalls. So these are rocks, mud, that kind of hard. So if you're really good, if you've got lots of balance, you have really strong legs, you have really good poles, you have really good grip boots, then if you're an experienced hiker, that's not a problem. Here they call it a technical hike, meaning that it's not the aerobic challenge, but is the knowing how to hike, where to put your foot. And, you have very strong legs where you can climb up, a rocky area. I don't know. Does that explain? You probably should talk to one of the guides because remember, I'm not an expert hiker.
Right.
You're much more than I, so it's hard for me to answer your questions.
I know. So I'm trying to figure out how we might logistically do something like that. So perhaps is it on those 4, are those 4 trails near each other?
Well, 2 of them. So you could go all the way from you could do section 14, 15, and 16 together in only 2. So you're basically doing the hypotenuse, cutting off those last 3 sections from Tarrazú, from Nápoles de Tarrazú to Quepos. You would be going through mountains, and you would be staying in Esquipula Rainforest Lodge in between, which is a pretty nice place. They're doing now platforms for tents, but they have nice cabins there. And Juancho could do that for you. In other words, he could take you from Nápoles de Tarrazú to Esquipula through mountain, and from Esquipulas all the way to Quepos through mountain.
If somebody wasn't sure, somebody says, I think I can do it, but I'm not 100% sure, and you're with other people and you don't want to put a damper on theirs if you find you can't. If you hired a separate guide for yourself that you say, okay, well, I don't, this is much more challenging, or I'm too scared to do whatever, your guide could take you back and do the easier way. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, I mean, once you're not too far into it. Yeah.
Right. But even if because
going back, yeah,
if you got instead of a 4-hour day.
Yeah, they can always take you back from where you came and then go around in the more gravel dirt road. Yeah.
So there is a solution. It's just going to cost you time and money.
Yeah, and you'd have to hire an extra guide.
You hire an extra guide, but that would be your safety net. Yeah. Okay. I think I could do it, but I would like to see some pictures first.
Rancho speaks English. He's actually, he speaks English pretty well. He could explain it. And now that you're asking this question, I might ask him to film some of it.
That would be great. And I'm happy to embed all of your videos on my site so they'll get a chance to see those. It just sounds so fascinating, Conchita. I'm super excited, and I would like to do this. I'm thinking, I've already got 2021 booked, but if anybody would like to join me in the summer of 2022, be sure to reach out to me. Let's get a group together and let's go. I want to see the turtles. I want to do all the options. And could we also stay an extra day on the Picadillo River and do an extensive rafting?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things, like if you're doing it in either direction, so you're coming from the Atlantic, you've done the indigenous peoples, And when you get to the Pacuares River, we can have a raft there waiting for you. Okay, but now you've walked 19.6 kilometers. Are you going to really be ready to?
Well, is the Rainforest Lodge available that we could spend the night there and then raft the next day?
And then raft the next day, and then have them pick you up and take you to close to the point where you left the trail off.
Yeah,
you could
sounds
definitely
like customizable.
Yeah, I mean, and that the people at Ave Sol Lodge were ready to do that just when for a group, just when COVID hit, and then we had to cancel that. So we have never tried it, but it was already set up to be done.
Gotcha.
So absolutely, you could do that, and that from that lodge, you end the indigenous people's trek on that lodge. Spend the night. It's an incredible place to stay. It's not fancy, but the experience is extraordinary.
So beautiful too. I remember I've done the Pequari twice. The first time I went by the lodge, I was like, I'm going to stay there next time I come through here. And so it's such a beautiful, you're in paradise. It's just stunning. The morpho butterfly, it's just beautiful. I would definitely go back there again. I'd even stay a couple days. So if you
end in Siquirres, and then the tour operator picks you up and takes you, and you would stay in Finca Tres X, and then just keep on doing the trail from there.
Sounds perfect. So let's do it. Let's plan that 2022. Who wants to go? Definitely write me at kit@activetraveladventures.com and let's put it together. What would be the most you would recommend? We want to have at least 6 to 8. What's the high end?
17 in a group last year. These were Dutch people from Brazil that had been walking together all over the world. So they were a pretty, smooth group in terms of getting along with each other. So that worked. But I'd be scared to do this challenging thing with people I didn't know, with that many people. So, there's
I think in something like that, you want 2 guides in, and maybe even 3. Somebody in the front, somebody in the back.
There were 2 guys. And these were people in their 60s. I was totally amazed. I met them as they were going into the indigenous people lands. And boy, did I say my prayers. Nothing would go wrong. But they did it, and they loved it.
Now, my audience is any indication, because many of us are well above 50 and have a few gray hairs, and they can rock it. They're very.
I know. I'm sure. But I'm just saying, 17 people.
Yes, that is a large group.
I wouldn't do more than 12.
Yeah, more than 12.
Yeah.
All right, so 6 to
between
12.
8 and 12. 6 and 12. Yeah.
6 and 12, and we'll do 2 guides at least.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Any final thoughts or any final words you'd like to tell us about walking the El Camino de Costa Rica?
Well, I can just say that, keep all your senses open, sounds, taste, sight, the feel, the textural feels of everything, and be open to learning a lot. I mean, even the local guides, they know so much. There's this one guide that was telling me about this leaf that looked totally insignificant, and he picked it and he crunched it up, and you smelled it, and it smelled like anise. Anise, it smelled just like, and says, well, the Maleku indigenous people wrap their fish in this when they cook it. And it's like this constant, if you're open to it, there's this constant, incredible experience of learning about so many things. Anyway, that would be my thing. Just come with an open mind and all your senses, but with all your preparation, so that you take care of your body well and make this a really good experience.
It just sounds extraordinary, Conchita. I'm so glad I've happened to see that Facebook post, and what you and the association are doing is just outstanding. It just is incorporating the beauty of the country with the people, and it is just win-win-win every way around. I'm just so excited to be able to share this with everybody.
Thanks, kid. And it's been a wonderful experience talking with you. I congratulate you. You have an incredible talent for what you're doing also. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, and appreciate you coming on the program. As you can tell, I absolutely love this adventure, and I'm planning on going in the summer of 2022. I hope you'll join me. We already have 7 people interested, but there are still some spots, and there's no telling that the 7 that have said that they want to go can fit it in with the time we end up going. So if you are interested, please reach out to me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. It's going to be a longer trip than a normal 2 weeks because they recommend 16 days to do the hike itself. I do want to do the Pecuary, Manuel Antonio. I want to see the turtles. So it's probably going to be close to like a 3-week trip. So keep that in mind too. I hope you have enjoyed this 2-part series on the new Camino of Costa Rica. And please share this with your friends. Get the word out. They're doing something really special down there in Costa Rica. And this will be one way that we can help spread the word to help them build this trail, build the infrastructure, and help these little villages keep their identities and their village so they don't have to all move to San Jose to get work. So this is just a wonderful win-win-win situation that I'm really excited to share with you today. I do have one further announcement. I am getting ready to head out traveling full-time. When I went out full-time last summer, it was extraordinarily difficult to try to get the show together, try to produce it. I don't have the internet, I don't have cell coverage, and I don't even know where I'm going to be most of the time. So until further notice, I'm only going to promise the very first Thursday of the month I'll have a show. If it turns out I have connection that I can produce a show, you'll have 2 episodes per month, but for sure I'll make sure there's at least 1 per month on the first Thursday of the month. So be sure you've subscribed so you don't miss that coming into your feed. And I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, I thank you very much for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.